Hello everyone and welcome. Today we'll be looking at shell, variables and expansions. Also, I'll be dropping a tip on how to go through all your resources even when you don't have a lot of time. So using the least possible time, you can go through all your resources. I'll show you how that is done. You could use this tip to go through your resources moving forward and answer your tax questions very confidently. Let's get started. Okay, so I'm using my PowerShell to do this project, and we'll simply go to tag 0. So tag 0 has the question, create a script that create an alias. Okay, so let's assume I don't really have time to go through these resources for now, but I have to beat the deadline. How can I do just that? I look at the questions very critically and then try to go to the resources with that particular question in mind. For example, create a script that create an alias. Of course, if you've gone through the resources, you would see that it's very, very easy actually to create this script. And the alias command is very simple. But let's assume I have not gone through the resources because of time. Although it is advised that you go through it, here's what you can do to help. Now I'm going to go to my internet, the intranet, and go through the files I've been given. So for example, today for this project, we have, I think, 4 or 5 resources to go through. And I don't have time to go through these 4 or 5 resources critically before answering the questions. So I'm already on the first question and I have no idea about it. What do I do? It's very simple. So what I do from here is very simple. I've just opened the first resource. I'll look at my question, create a script that creates an alias. Okay, so what I'm looking for is an alias. Here what I see is expansion. So I know it's not exactly what I'm looking for since I'm not looking for expansion. Okay, so it seems like everything here will talk about expansion. It's still talking about expansion. Now it's talking about quoting. So double quotes, it's still around quoting. And it's talking about single quotes, still around quoting. Escaping characters, okay? Backslash tricks, okay? And that's all. So I know this resource doesn't really talk about alias, and that's exactly what I'm looking for. I'll move on to the next resource. If you note, I did not read every line here. I just focus on the headers. So that's it. Trick number 1. Focus on your header. Your H1, your words written in bold, and your code blocks here. Actually focus on this thing. Your embedded codes and your headers could save you a lot of time. So I've looked at all the headers here and even the embedded codes. No one is exactly talking about alias. I'm going to move on to the next resource. So just like this, I've skimmed through this first resource. Now I'm going to move on to the second resource, and it's talking about shell arithmetic. Okay, so I'm just going to scroll down and look if there's another header. This is a very simple and short material. It has only one header and it talks about only one thing, the shell arithmetic. So I know this is not what I'm looking for. I'm going to go to the next, variables. So I can see variables by contents. Creating variables. What am I looking for? Tag 0 says create an alias. Now I have no idea how to create an alias, remember, and I'm looking at the resource, but I don't have a lot of time to, of course, go through all these, to read all these. It could really be stressful. So I'm just looking for the headers to see if there's anything that talk about an alias. I can see variables, I can see local variables, creating variables, exporting variables, reserved variables. Now, special parameters. Okay, so I'm going to still check if I can see an alias script with recycling variables. I still do not see an alias here. And I've searched through 3 materials now. This that I was talking about, expansions and quotes, shell arithmetic, and now variables. I've not seen an alias. I'm going to continue. So you can see I'm just skimming through, looking for headers. And of course, if you have time, you could also check for these embedded codes if you see what you're looking for there. But so far, I have not seen the alias command which I'm looking for. I'll continue to move forward, and the next resource. So here there are about 5 resources, and I'm currently in the 4th one. Remember, looking for alias. Now what I have here is shell initialization files, system configuration, so etc batch, individual user configuration, bash logout, changing shell configuration, and this is the end of this resource. I've still not seen anything concerning alias, and I'm done with 4 resources. So you see, there's no time, but I've just quickly skimmed through 4 resources looking for alias. So if you don't have time to consume all the contents before answering your questions, this is what you can do. Open your tags and skim through. Focus on the headers and try to see if the answers are there. If it's not there, check your embedded codes here and see if the answers are there. Now, we've covered 4 of the 5 resources and I've not seen the answer. So let me go to the 5th resource and see if I can get the answer there. And oh yes, I see the answer, the alias command. So this is what I'm looking for, the alias command. But if you see, I don't have time, and that's why I'm skimming through. And you can see this resource is quite voluminous, at least because I don't have time. So what do? Most times when you see a heading like this, the very first lines are just an introduction to the headings. So this introduction could be where the quiz questions would be taken from. But most likely, the introductions are not where your tags are taken from. So I'm going to go back to my question now and try to see how I can skim through straight to the answer now that I've found the alias command which I'm looking for. Create a script that creates an alias. Okay, so I'm going to break this question down. I'm asked to create a script, so I've broken it down first, that creates an alias. Okay, so what I'm going to be doing is create an alias. They gave the name and the value there, which is not so important for now. I want to see how to create an alias first. As I've explained before, most times what you have in your first paragraph or your first lines are most times just intros. So I'm going to go down again to these words written in bold, look like a H6 text, listing and creating alias. Remember, my question asked me to create an alias, and I've just seen something that concerns that question, which is creating alias. Okay, so here is where I'm going to actually be careful, because this is it, listing and creating alias. So it means that the answer to my question is going to be here. Sometimes this is what I do. I try to see the heading that contains my answer and the next heading. So this is the heading that contains my answer. I'm going to go down to see the next heading. And you can see the next heading here, uses for alias. So it's clear that my answer is somewhere between here and and here. So you could see this is still a bit long because once again, I don't have time. I'm trying to beat the deadline and we have so many tasks to cover. I may not have time to read through all this. This is what I'm going to do. Now that I've known where the answer is, between here and here, I'm going to simply scroll down, but this time much more carefully. So some of the alias is listed. So they were simply listing different kind of alias here. So I'm just going to go down. I'm going to read the first 5 lines of each paragraph. So it makes no difference whether a double or single quotes are used when creating an alias. Look at this. I want to know how to create an alias, and here it's saying it makes no difference whether a double or single quote are used when creating an alias. So they're actually talking about creating an alias here. So I'm going to read down the example. So they are giving examples. Okay, so I'm going to pay attention to these examples. Now I'm just going to still go down again. So this example now, look at it. It makes no difference whether double or single quote are used when creating an alias. And this is an example of a single quote alias. So you see, this is exactly what I'm looking for. The tag says create a script that creates an alias. And I've just seen an example of how to create an alias. Now, if I look up a little bit, I can see this line. An alias can be created with the same name, okay, as the core name of a command. So here is where it actually talks about how to create an alias. And look at how they did this. Look at the example of creating an alias with a double quote and creating an alias with a single quote. They said it makes no difference if you decide to use double quotes or single quotes. So just like this, I've skimmed through all the resources and I've gotten the answer to what I need. I've skimmed through 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 resources in the least possible time, and I've gotten the answer I need. No copy, no pasting. I've gotten the answer I need by myself with my own hands. Remember, you have to own your code. Do your work with your own hands. Do not always look for already made copy and paste answers. So now I've gotten what I want. This is the example to create an alias. I'm going to highlight this text now. So let me make my screen a bit bold. So I'm going to highlight this text and go back to my question. Create a script that creates an alias. So an alias, to create it is simple. I have to use the command alias and ls and then the equal to value. Now look at it again. The value of the alias I'm creating according to the question is rm and then asterisk. Okay, so this is it, name, ls. Okay, so this is how to do it. So I'm just simply going to use this format here to do it. If I don't understand it at this point, how this example actually concerns my question, all I have to do is simple. Very, very simple. I'm going to now take my time reading here. So I'm going to take my time now to read here. And after reading here, I'll get the exact sense of how to create the alias. So you see, just like this, you've gotten the answer to your question. After getting how to create an alias from here, I have to use the alias, the command name ls, and then I have to run the value I'm actually going to turn this into. So the value in my own case is not LSAL. The value in my own case is going to be ROM and then asterisk. So I'm going to come here now to my terminal and get to work. As you can see, I'm in my roots. And then this start is going to take place in your ALX system engineering DevOps. So I'm going to LS first to check whether I have that folder already here. I can see it here, ALX system engineering DevOps. So I'm simply going to cd into ALX system engineering DevOps. Hit enter. That's it. Now after hitting enter, the directory is going to be 0x03 shell variables expansion. Okay, so let me ls to see if I have that directory. I don't have that directory, so I'm going to create it. 0x03. Of course, you create it by using your mkdir command. 0x03 shell variables expansion. Okay, there we go. And you could simply use the trick I showed, the short form, to cd into the directory just immediately after creating it by using your and command, cd, and then my quotation mark, $, dash. So what this command does, as you can see here, it's going to make the directory first and then cd into it. Let's see. So here we go. It has created the directory and it cd'd into it for me. So I find this better than actually creating the directory first and then cding into it. And then we are going to create a file named 0 alias for this project. So I'm just going to do vi. Of course, to be faster, you can simply copy the name of the file, just like this. Copy, paste it here, enter. It's going to take you to your VI environment. Remember, you have to use the bin bash. And then in your second line, that's where you actually write the command. So I'm going to put what I've gotten now from this my resource to good use on how to create a directory. And first the alias command. And so let me go back to it. Yes, so I'm going to put this to good use now. Of course, when you see this, you want to read here to gain detailed information of exactly what this command does. So I'm going to write out the command now, and that's simply my alias. So you want to be careful not to make any typographical errors, or else it would return an error. Most of us are already used to that. And here we go. Yes. So the alias command is ls, and then the value is rm asterisk. I'm going to save this now and quit. So that's it. I'm done with task 1. Task 0, which is your first task, of this project. I move over to task 1. Create a script that prints hello user, where user is the current Linux user. Okay, so I'm going to print the file first. We can just copy this. Press enter, insert, and then remember to put your bin bash. So even without knowing the answers to the question, you should at least know this process. You create your file, put your bin bash first, and then you could go search for the answers. So once again, I'm going to assume I have not gone through any of the resource prior to this time I'm taking the task because of time. And now this time I just want to beat the deadline and later go back to the resource. So I don't know how to create a script that prints hello user when user is the current Linux user. I don't know how to do that. So this is what we can simply do. We'll go back to our resources again. So it's really easy to do just that. All we have to do is go back to our resource this time with the second question in mind. So just like I did in the first example, I'm going to be redoing it for this second example so that it becomes very clear to us. So we are going to create a script that prints hello user, where user is the current Linux user. The first one was simple. We are asked to create an alias. So we simply went to look for the alias command. Here we are asked to print hello user, where user is the current Linux user. So how do I search for this question in the among my resource without actually wasting too much time or looking for copy and paste answers? The simple way to do that is to break my question down into smaller components. So create a script. That's the first question, and of course we'll create our script in VI, so we already know that it prints hello user, okay, where user is the current Linux user. So I'm just going to be thinking, how do I know the current Linux user? How can I search for the current Linux user? So I'm going to skim through all the articles in this resource just to look for the answer. How do I know where the current Linux user is? So this is the alias command. I've already gone through the alias command. Remember when we skimmed through the alias command for our first question, and it doesn't really tell us anything about Linux user. So, and I'm done. This is the end of the article that talk about the alias command. So I'm going to know the answer to the current Linux user cannot be in the alias command. I'm going to go to my next article, which is the shell initialization. So once again, I'm going to focus on two things. One, the header, and two, the embedded code in here. So the header doesn't talk about current Linux user. It's talking about configuration. So I'm going to check out for the code. So I'm going to increase my screen now, so it's clear. So here's the code. So it's talking about configuration and environment startup, login setup. Doesn't really talk about user here. Path user, log name, export. But these are all configuration files. The question did not ask me to configure anything. It just says I should print a script that says hello user, where user is the current Linux user. So this is not what I'm looking for. So I'm going to go down. Now I can see some alias command. I'm still going to go down because that's not what I'm looking for. Individual user configuration. So it seems like everything about here is going to talk about configuration. So I'm just keep going to scroll down. My aliases, you can see bash logout. So you can actually see the keywords I'm taking note of. They're actually my header and my embedded code. If you take note of these keywords, you would actually be able to answer your questions without looking for copy and paste answers, even if you don't have time to go through all your resources. So I've gone through the second resource here, and I've not seen anything that tells me where the current Linux user is or how to find the current Linux user. I'm going to go to my third resource now, and it's talking about variables. So let's see. Variables, types of variables, not what I'm looking for. Remember what we are looking for in this question, where the current Linux user is. Local variables, variables by content, creating variables, exactly not what we're looking for. So I'm just keep going to skim it, special parameters. That's not talking about user. So I'm going to just keep going forward. Script recycling with variables. It's still not talking about what I want. I'm going to keep going forward. And I'm at the end. So I know that this doesn't concern what I'm doing. Shell arithmetic. So arithmetic has to do with numbers, figures, a little calculations and the rest. By default, I already know arithmetic will have nothing to do with current Linux user. So I'm going to go to this last one. And it's talking about expansion. Not what I'm looking for, but I'm just still going to scroll. So I'm going to take note of the header files. And not just the header files now, but the embedded codes here. Remember, I've already checked 4 articles and I've not seen the answer. So I'm going to really be careful as I scroll down to the end and try to go up again. Backlash treats, not what I'm looking for. Escaping characters, not what I'm looking for. Single quotes, not what I'm looking for. I can see some embedded codes here that is echoing calendar. It's not what I'm looking for. And my eye just caught something in the embedded codes. You can see it here. Echo user. Now I'm going to go back to my question. Create a script that prints hello user, where user is the current Linux user. Okay, so I'm seeing something that concerns user here, but I don't exactly understand what these codes are doing. So I'm going to go up a little. Remember, I started from down, so I'm going to go up. And now I don't see user up. This is the only place I saw user, but I'm still going to go up. I'm not seeing user again. And I've seen user. No, this is not user. So you can see this process takes a little time, but of course, things will take time. And then I can see another one, echo user. What does echo user print? It prints out me as the current user. You can see it here. Me, the current user. When I print out echo user in this dummy code, it's printing out me. So this is like a clue on what to do here. Your question says create a script that prints hello user, where user is the current Linux user. So it's going to print out who the current Linux user is. And so here is it, echo user. I'm still going to go up if I can get anything from here. So it seems like I can't get anything from here. But of course, I'm going to look for the subheading where I first found my echo user. So I'm going to look for the subheading, and here I see it in parameter expression. Okay, so I'll just take time to read these first words here. We're only going to touch briefly on parameter expansion in this lesson, And then I'm going to come down. Many chunks, more probably called variables, are available for examination. For example, the variable name user contains our username. So I can see where this is coming from. This is a variable user, and this variable user is going to print out our username because it contains our username. And now the question says create a script that prints hello user, where user is the current Linux user. So I think from here it's simple. It's just asking me to create a script that's going to print hello to this user. So it's very simple. I've known how to do it. What I have here is echo user. And the question is saying print hello user. So it's simple. I'm just going to do echo hello user. Simple, because it says I should print hello user. So I'm just going to add hello to the user. Just like that, you're done with task 2. Yesterday, in my previous tutorial, I talked about how to validate your answers. That's exactly what I'm going to be doing with Git batch here. So I'm not going to use the checker to check if this answer is correct. I'm going to be using my terminal. So I can simply open another PowerShell or another CMD or another Git batch, and I've chosen Git batch here. So I'm going to type the same command, echo hello user here. Press enter to see what happens. So here in my Ubuntu environment, I'm going to save and quit. I'm done with task 1. I hope these explanations help you a whole lot now in this project and in future projects to actually skim through your work and get the answers by your own self with your own hands. Of course, if I just do a tutorial that copies and pastes all the answers, it should not be more than 10 minutes and I'm done. But you can see the length of this tutorial because this is how to do it your own self. Of course, this method are for those who may not have the time to go through the resources completely before the deadline. But if you can, please do go through the resources completely before the deadline. Okay, so I'm going to go to question, the third task now. And I really do hope we've learned something from the first 2 examples. So here we go. Remember, your first line is always going to be bin bash. I'm going to copy, paste, and then in the second line, add action to the path. Action should be the last directory the shell program looks into when running for a program. Okay, so I'm going to remove action and add it to the path. So, of course, I could simply go back using the examples I did in the first 2 tasks to actually look for the code to do that. But if I get to do this for every code we'll write here, all the compulsory questions, this video will be so long. So because of that, I'm just going to simply drop brief explanations as to the answers. And you want to do well to do it with your own hands. Go through it your own self and get used to it. So So this is actually not some jargon. If you check your question, you would actually see that we're in line. So I think this should work. Let me briefly go back to the question again to see what we are asked to do. Add action to the paths. Action should be the last directory the shell program looks into when looking for a program. So when the shell directory looks into our paths, action should be the last directory that we've added to these paths. I hope we got it. We've just added action to these paths. And then when the shell directory looks into these paths, action will be what it will look for last. And oops. Let me save and leave the VI environment. And I'm going to go to the VI third task. So I'm just going to copy it. So I may be much more quicker now, especially because of time. We're just in the third task. But I hope we've really learned something. It's a tip that has helped me so far. I hope it does help you too. So you can attempt most questions with your own hands. Okay, so simply just want to go forward and question 3, the path is beautiful. Let's not ask where it leads. Of course, we are not going to ask where it leads, and that's it. Echo the paths. It's beautiful. We are just going to count the number of directories in the paths using this command here, your WC and L command. So you do well to go through that later because of our time. Let's see how fast we can be. Oops, seems like I have. Okay, everything works well. Let me confirm. Everything works well. Global variables. So once again, this method I'm showing you on how to get answers works if you are extremely busy. You're working during the day, you have time during the nights, and you also have to take a rest. Maybe there's no power supply, you have to be extremely fast, no time to go through the resources. You could do this. Let's look at question 4. Create a script that lists environment variables. So let's assume I have no idea about this because I've not gone through any of the resource. All I simply have to do is skim once again through all my resources. Now you've skimmed for the previous 3 questions. You should have an idea of what each resource is talking about. For example, here it's talking about expansion. It's talking about the shell arithmetic. Here it's talking about variables. Oh yes. So skimming for the 4th time shouldn't be difficult at all, because the question says create a script that lists out environmental variables, and here we have variables. So all we are going to do is just going to look for environmental variables. So you can see type of variables, You want to pay attention. We have global variables and local variables, variables by content, and that's all. I don't see environmental variables. The next thing I'm seeing is creating variables, which is actually a different topic. Types of variables, and then the next thing I see is creating variables. So it's clear that types of variables is over, but I did not see environment variables, and that's exactly what I'm looking for. So I'm going to calm down this time. Global variables. I'll read a little. Global variables or environmental variables. So it's clear. Global variables are also environmental variables. Just like that. So far, so good. You've gotten another answer. So simple. So you could simply take a moment, take a bottle of water, or just dance, or just play one cool song to chill, since you are getting the answers with your own hands. That's so nice. So, environment variables. I've seen what I'm looking for. I go back to the question. Create a script that lists environment variables. So how do I list environment variables? I just continue to work. I can see some words in bold here. The env or print env command can be used to display environment variables. Can you see? So just like that, with your own hands, you've gotten the answer. Below is a typical output. Here it gave us two commands, but in their output example, they actually use one command here, and the command was print env. If you're not so sure what this does, you can come here on your Ubuntu just to make sure that you don't encounter any errors because of using Windows. I would advise you to use Ubuntu to check it out. But here, I just hit the command print env, and it shows me a list of environmental variables we have. Can you see them? So I'm clear this is correct. I can see SSH, home, CMP, temp program, and all of that. So I'm going to go to my PowerShell, very confident of what I just got from my resource with my own hands, and paste it. Just like that, they say create a script that lists environment variables. This is the answer, and I'm done. There's absolutely no time to waste. I'm going to go to, so I'm going to list ls, and here we go. I've cleared to keep my working directory clean. No time. I'm going to number 5 as quickly as possible. So you could pause this video from here and try to use what you've learned so far to do the best stats. Try to do it yourself. See if you're going to get it. Let's assume all the examples, you're still trying to comprehend what we are doing. So I'm still going to use number 5 as another example. Yes, so that you in detail get how to do this so well that you don't rely on anyone to give you predefined answers. Of course, in some cases, you're going to have serious errors and you will need help. That is why we have peers and technical mentors. But the idea of spoon feeding and just sharing answers without explanations, nothing of such, it doesn't make any sense. As software engineers, we should be fixing problems and not looking for answers without any idea of how we got there. Okay, so let's go to number 5. I said I would do an example with this. Create a script that lists all local variables and environment variables and functions. Oh yeah. So how do we list local variables, environment variables, and functions? Remember, I have no idea. I'm going to go back. So this is how to list global variables, local variables. So how do I list local variables? Local variables are available in the current shift. Using the set built-in command, this is the command, set built-in command without any options will display a list of all variables, including environmental variables and functions. Does this ring a bell? Look at the question. Create a script that lists all local variables, environmental variables, and functions. Using the set built-in command without any options will display a list of all variables. So you see, your own hands, you've gotten the answer again. I'm going to copy this because there's no time and paste it here. I'm going to exit VI, save, and quit. I am done. It's so simple. These things are usually not complicated. Just you need to take your time and do it with your own hands. I've just used the set command and you can see a whole list of things. All the variables in this computer has been listed out. So it's clear that what I did worked out well. So I'm going to save and quit. And I'm going to move on. Task 6. Create a script that creates a new local variable. From here, moving forward should be easy. Moving forward should really be easy. Creating variables. So you see, this is so simple. We've listed environmental variables, local variables. All your questions now, the past 3 questions have all got to do with variables. So you just come down, skim through local variables. You just go down, variables by content, creating variables. Now you have the question that says create a script that create a new local variable. Okay, so I'm going to read this. Variables are case sensitive. Okay. I'm trying to skim through. Giving local variables a lowercase name is a convention which is sometimes applied. So how do I create local variable? Since they are giving us a clue here. So this did not work because we can see it threw an error. So I'm not going to use this because it threw an error. So I'm going to come down. To set a variable in shell, use variable name and then the value. So I'm going to go back to my question. We are done just like this. It's so simple. We are asked to create a script that create a new local variable. Look at the answer staring at us. To set a variable in shell, use variable name and then the value. So what that simply means is that I'm going to go back to my terminal now. Variable name, the value. What's the variable name in your question? You see, these things are usually simple. So the variable name in our question there is best. So I'm going to enter my VI environment. Don't forget compulsory in all files. And the variable name is best. And the function is school. Clearly written in our question. Just like this, I'm done. Of course, you could come here to validate it. You could come to your terminal to validate it if you're not sure. But in clear cases where you're sure because you've gotten the exact answer looking at you here in your resource, You could just decide to move on with life. To the next question, 7. So I've given a whole lot of examples, about 6 examples now, on how you can get the answers with your hands, even if you don't have enough time to go through everything, all the resource. You could simply use this pattern and keep moving forward. Finally, I'm going to do question 7. I'm going to do question 7 finally, and for the rest I'm just going to run through them. I hope when you're watching this video, as at the time you do, from question 7 you could confidently pause this video and complete question 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 and 13 without looking at how I'm going to do it in the video. After doing yours by yourself without looking at how I'm going to do mine, then you can come back, check your code, and then compare it with mine. You may be surprised the answers will be exactly the same. The best feeling comes when you do it with your own hands. So, look at question 7. It's simple. They are all related. Question 7 is saying we should create an environmental variable. So I'm taking time to explain this concept on how you can get the answers to yours by yourself, even without having all the time in the world, because this is the only way forward for us. We cannot continue to copy and paste answers just like that. So, create global variable. What we just did was to create a local variable. Now we're going to create a global variable. So, creating variables. To set a variable, so this is a local variable. So how do we create global variable? I'm simply going to go down. A variable created like the ones in the example above is only available to the local shell. It is a local variable. So what we did was a local variable. All these examples here are local variables. Now, in order to pass variables to a subshell, we need to export them using the export built-in command. Variables that are exported are referred to as environmental variables. Does this ring a bell? Remember, we've seen before up here that environmental variables are global variables. And here it's saying variables that are exported are environmental variables. And to create environmental variables, we have to use the export built-in command. So simple. So we are going to export first the variable name and then the value. Let's go. Just like that. Export. So what's the variable name? Best is the variable name. So what is the and then we have school. So this is it. The difference between the local and the environmental variable was simply the exports. I'm going to save and quit. If I list now, I'm going to see all the 8 tasks I've done. So I can simply move on to question 8. So let me copy the file name. True knowledge. Okay, so I want to believe we've gotten, even if it's not a true knowledge, at least a partial knowledge of how we can do our assignments with our own hands, get answers we need with our own hands, even when we don't have a lot of chance. And so assume that's what we've been able to do with this. And so from here on, I've said it before, try to pause this video and see if you can get the answers by yourself. So question 8, every addition to true knowledge adds to the human power. I really hope these additions from this tutorial would have added to our power. This is what has personally helped me, and that is why I'm sharing it. So let's go. Okay, here we go. And I think that should work. Of course, there are a few more ways to do this. Any way you discover, please use it. Once again, I really did hope you discovered it by yourself using the examples we did. We move over to 9. We don't want to keep this video so long and make it boring. And so I'm simply going to remember, I always copy the first lines. Another tip that could help you be faster rather than try to type it by yourself, you could simply copy it like I do. And then for your second lines, you just move on. If you got number 8, you did it with your own hands and got it by yourself. Number 9 should be pretty straightforward. So, but assuming for some reasons you try doing it with your own hands, couldn't get it, then you could just follow along and try to figure out why we use each commands we use and what each command does. Why are we using power and then $sign first? Why are we using echo? Try to figure out these things. Of course, there are any resources. So we keep moving and then straight to question 10. Question 10, as usual, copy that. Paste it, and then we keep echoing. You already know what the echo does. If it doesn't, if you don't know what it does, so these are ways to learn. You could now decide to specifically search for what the echo does. In this way, you will not only be copying, but you would also learn as you do. And cheers to all the people who have actually found that new, improved, better ways of doing most of the tasks I actually do here, because they've done it with their own hands and have done their own research. I really do appreciate your contributions. We go to 11, binary to decimal. So please, if this tutorial has proved helpful in any way, has taught you any new thing, or helps you to complete your assignments, please, please, and please do leave a like, comment below that it was helpful, or if it wasn't, if you did not hear me clearly, if I was too fast, if the explanations were not detailed or too detailed, please do let me know. And of course, you can also reach out to the community on Slack or WhatsApp, and we'll definitely be glad to put you through in areas where you may have challenges. So we are seconds away. We're just 2 tasks away from finishing all the compulsory tasks. So some people have asked me, why don't you do the advanced tasks? That's because I believe that if you follow through all the explanations with the compulsory tasks from start to finish, at least you should be able to attempt the advanced tasks to a reasonable degree, where you get to understand what happens. And then if you still have challenges, of course, you could reach out to the community of peers on WhatsApp or on Slack. So keep moving. And the last question actually has something to do with C. Want to enter C, even though I know it's going to be challenging, but of course, the only way to justify a privilege, the privilege we get of being alive and being in Africa and doing things, is to do hard things. So I'm really, really excited, and I hope you are. This method of doing things with your own hand is going to come especially helpful as we enter our first programming language and languages. So you simply want to really take this simple and here we go. I'll just save and quit, as that's the printed out the number, answer to number 13, prints F floats, and then floats digits there, and then the number. And that should mean I'm done. Yes, that should mean I am done. Of course, so I'm going to list out everything we have. So I can see everything I have here. But I do not have a README. So I'm going to go to VI and just create a readme.md. There are other ways to do it, but just feel using VI. I'm going to write readme. Read me file. But of course, do not write readme file in your own file. you want to follow the instructions and write exactly what we were asked to write. So if I ls now, I can see everything, including my readme file. The next thing I want to do, first I clear, and then ls, you can see all the files I have. So I'm going to make all my files executable. So let's go, starting from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. Press enter, and then I ls again. You can see I have everything executed. Okay, I forgot 1 and 2. So let's do that. X 1 and 2. Now if I ls, you can see everything is executable. Next up, I simply git add while on my 0x03 git commit -m, and I just write expansions. Of course, you want to write a better message, and then going to git push. This tutorial was a bit long, but I hope it did help us to learn a whole lot that could be beneficial to us in the coming days, weeks, months, and throughout our software engineering career, doing it with our own hands. So I've pushed my everything to GitHub now, and next up is to check my code. Once I check my code, I'll see that I'm done. You are done. We are done with these tasks. Next thing we want to do is, if we have not gone through all the resources, maybe we skimmed through to go through it. Once we have time, 1 hour, 2 hours that you have free, even if it's 30 minutes free, please go back and try to see how much content you can consume with that your free time. Success to all of us in this journey. Thank you so much for staying tuned. This tutorial has been long but helpful. So if it did help you, if you did learn anything, if you have any suggestions, feedback, or comments, please do well to reach out on WhatsApp or Slack. The link to the WhatsApp community is down below. If this is your first time coming to this channel, please kindly subscribe to get more great content, and drop a positive comment as well as like. You're also free to share the videos to others who may have similar challenges. Thank you so much, and until the next time we meet, it's a goodbye from me.